Hey everybody, excuse me. Hey everybody, Steve here from The Varied Life, the retired hobby tech guy who is also an American expat here in Korea. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, by the title Retired in Korea, that should kind of clue you in, but a little bit of background. The wife and I, my wife who has Korean ancestry, we decided to sell everything in the United States: house, car, truck, guns, ammo, guns, ammo, and a bunch of other stuff. Even the all of the stuff in the kitchen junk drawer, we got rid of it all. Had a couple of suitcases, and boom, we ended up retiring here in Korea. So it's been an interesting journey, and we've been in Korea for over 2 years now. We spent a year in Hawaii, and then we came to Korea, and yeah, we're living our best lives now. For some of the people, you might be wondering why. Because we were able to retire early. So, and the expenses are half of what we were paying in the United States. But that's not what we're going to talk about today, because today is going to be about this here, retired in Korea. We're going to talk a little bit about the doctor strike, which, in case you didn't know, has been going on since February. We're going to talk about voting and foreigners voting in Korea in political elections. Then we're going to look at foreign marriages, how those are on the rise. And then the evil electronic IDs for foreigners. Ooh, the mark of the beast, 666. So we're gonna we're gonna jump into this. Let's start off, and we'll just go ahead right into it. And what we'll end up seeing here, courtesy of the Korean Times, is a Vietnamese woman gives birth in an ambulance after 13 hospitals refuse care. I never thought I would see this in my life unless it was a third world country. Now, don't get me wrong, Korea has excellent medical care. If you go to Seoul and you go to the big hospitals, Samsung Medical Center, and they get a bunch of others, you can get some top notch care. Matter of fact, there's medical tourism that goes on. Yeah, there's cosmetic surgery, but that's different than what the doctor strike that we're talking about now. Now, the doctor strike, you have about 10 to 13,000 resident doctors who have been on strike for over a year, which is insane. And it really doesn't make any sense because it's putting such a drain on the hospitals, as you can see. So let's go ahead and we'll jump into this. So, a pregnant Vietnamese woman went into labor at Incheon International Airport, gave birth after spending 2 hours searching for a hospital that would accept her. There are more reports of this happening, not of someone being pregnant and not getting into the hospital, but people not being able to find a hospital. She reportedly fainted. An ambulance was called, and yeah, it ends up that Inha University Hospital in Incheon, but the hospital refused to treat her for lack of obstetricians. So, in other words, yeah, they're missing some doctors, and the majority of doctors in the medical field in the United States and here in Korea are resident doctors. So you'll have an upper or superior doctor, they call them professors here in Korea, and then they'll have all the resident doctors down below, and they do the majority of the work. The senior doctor or professor will oversee to make sure that they don't kill anybody and they're getting properly trained in the field that they're working in. So with that, all of these doctors ended up going on strike because the doctors union rejected the idea that the Korean government wanted 3,000 more doctors. And so, in other words, open up the medical schools a little bit more and have 3,000 more doctors available for the ever aging and growing problem here in Korea of people need more doctors. Now, to put a little bit of context into this, we need to go back and talk about what's going on, because for the last 27 years, Korea has not increased the number of doctors. Sure, doctors will retire, they'll die, they'll pass along, they'll go from one specialty to another. So yeah, they'll have other doctors come in and take their places through attrition, but they haven't added any new doctors in 27 years. I'm not kidding. And any time that the government says, hey, we need to add more doctors because, the workflow, doctors are being overworked, they're working 120 hours a week, they're doing 36-hour shifts. It's just really, they can see up to 100 to 150 patients a day. And so that means, according to the doctors' union's own statistics, you might see your doctor for 3 or 4 minutes, maybe. And yeah, it's just kind of a weird thing. So going back to this, it ends up that the healthcare system, medical school quotas, shortage of physicians in pediatrics, obstetrics, baby birthing doctors. Emergency medicine, thoracic surgery, the strike has caused significant disruption in hospital services, leading to widespread appointment delays and frequent rejections at emergency rooms. I've done previous videos on this of where hospitals have closed their emergency rooms for 1 or 2 days a week. So yeah, you could be in an emergency, you go to the emergency room and they might be closed. Yeah, and so you got to go to another one. There was a case that I talked about previously where there was a person that had a heart attack. They ended up going to 7 different hospitals and they ended up dying. 13 hospitals in the Western Port City declined to treat her. Emergency services searched for a hospital in Seoul in the Gyeonggi area. They asked the rescue team how many weeks pregnant she was, but due to a language barrier, this is what I don't get. Look at this. But due to a language barrier, this information was unavailable, leading them to refuse her admission. Hello, Google Translate. I mean, it's not like there's free translation apps on every single cell phone in the world, to where, I mean, you could type and it translates, you can talk and it can translate. I mean, Google Translate, whatever. There's tons of free stuff. So I'm just kind of, it just seems odd that it's like, oh, we don't know how many weeks pregnant she is, so we're not going to accept her because of the language barrier. Get with the times. There's a thing called the translation app, Google app. And matter of fact, excuse me, what's interesting is that being in Korea, I don't speak fluent Korean. I can ask for a bathroom, buy beer, food, simple conversations. How you doing? Good. Yeah. But that's the extent of it. But when it gets into something like I'm asking for a product or, an appointment or whatever, Google in hospitals, I have used Google Translate, where it's like she starts off and it's like, hold on a second, da, 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 and then, I speak and then she reads and or he reads or whatever. Boom, problem solved. So this is just so weird. While waiting inside an ambulance in front of Inha Hospital, the pregnant woman began to experience labor pains. And her water broke. As a result, firefighters prepared for emergency delivery and delivered a boy at 2:33 p.m., 2 hours and 13 minutes after receiving the report. It remains unclear whether the woman was a visitor in Korea or a resident. We conducted an emergency delivery. The mother of the newborn were transferred to Inha University for treatment. So tell me how it's okay to have a birth in an ambulance with some paramedics versus going to a hospital and doing that. And this just shows you how bad the doctor strike has gone on. And when we talk about this doctor strike, it's gone on for over a year. Appointments have been backed up for 6 to 8 months, and I verified this with with one hospital that I checked up in Seoul that we usually go to for big things. They were saying, hospitals have shut down floors, entire wings because of the lack of doctors, so the lack of treatment, which means that they're not going to admit people into the hospital. And like I said, they've declined emergency services. Some hospitals will say, they'll publish and say, hey, our emergency room is going to be closed for 2 or 3 days out of the week. So the doctor strike is definitely something that is crazy, and it's something that you wouldn't imagine happening. I really just don't understand why the doctor strike would continue on, but it does. And again, the doctors union is like, oh, if we have 3,000 more doctors, it's going to destroy our medical system. Some people have said, what they're doing is they're lowering the standard. No, they're not. They're not lowering the standards for new doctors. You still got to do pre-med. You still got to do medical school. You still have to meet the same qualifications and certifications for your residency to become, a real doctor, a doctor without a supervisor, going through your residency, getting your certifications. So I don't understand how the doctors union is claiming that adding 2,000 or 3,000 more doctors is going to destroy the medical system. You'd think with the overwork that they're experiencing that they would welcome new doctors. And I've talked about this before and even the government reduced the amount and said, oh, we just want 1,200 or 1,500 or whatever it was. But that's basically out of the 100 teaching hospitals that are in Korea that take resident doctors. That's not even one per department, one extra person per department. It's like one extra doctor out of 3 departments or something like that. But even then, having one more person, one more doctor to see the patients would help alleviate the overwork that they're experiencing. But the doctors union says, no, well, we're not going to deal with that. So yeah, the doctor strike is still going on here in Korea, and it's kind of crazy. Speaking about, since this lady was Vietnamese and we don't know whether she was a tourist or a foreigner or, resident foreigner. And it also begs the question, why was she allowed to fly when she was so far along? She landed in Incheon Airport and faints, and then her water breaks and boom, the kid's born. I thought that airlines wouldn't let pregnant women fly if they're within, so far along with child. Apparently that's not the case, and I don't know if she came from Vietnam in the United States or some other country, but I would think that would be a thing to, look at. But again, there's no reason why anybody should go to a hospital and be turned away 13 times because there's a language barrier and everybody has a cell phone with a translation app. Yeah. And here's the bad thing is that there's no end in sight of this doctor strike. So I don't know what these 10 to 13,000 resident doctors, how they're paying their student loans because they have student loans in Korea. I don't understand how they're surviving. Maybe they have rich family members that are taking care of them. I don't understand because as they're going through residency, they've missed so much time. According to the Korean Medical Association, if you miss X amount of months, you have to redo that resident year. And if it goes further, you might have to redo your entire residency. And yet, the Korean government, at every single instance that they want to bring up and have more doctors, the doctors union strikes and the government folds. And we still see it to this day. And by the way, the Korean president that was playing hardball with the doctors union is going through an impeachment process, and we'll see what happens Monday with that whole ball of wax. Okay, we're going to continue on, and we're going to talk about this here. Ruling party opposes bill to deprive non-citizens of voting rights amid anti-China sentiment. This is kind of huge because Korea is a homogenous society. There's a lot of Koreans. It's almost like you're in a foreign country with the native people, which are Koreans, that are really, there's not a lot of diversity in Korea. Of course, same thing with Japan or other countries in the world, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it ends up here that the ruling party seek to take away the right to vote from all foreign permanent residents through legislation, a move apparently targeting Chinese residents amid anti-China sentiment increasingly shared among Korean conservatives. This is kind of an interesting little thing, and I'll give you my 2 cents at the end. But they're talking about, according to the People Power Party, which is, I think, the conservatives, proposed a bill where non-citizens who have held permanent resident visas here for 3 years or longer can vote to elect local officials such as governors and mayors. They can't vote for the president, but they can vote in local elections. I'm working just over 2 years on my visa, so yeah, will I vote? I don't think so. I don't know. But, my thinking is voting should be a right for citizens. So if you become a citizen of Korea, then you can vote for anybody and everybody. But if you're just here on a resident visa, I don't think, personally, I would allow people to vote because you're not here and you're not a permanent resident. So, yeah. The law is not aligned with the principle of reciprocity, given that most of our citizens who live in other countries as permanent residents don't have the right to vote there, which is a very excellent point because if you are a resident living, so let's say you're from Korea and you go to another country and you're a resident, you oftentimes don't have the right to vote in that country on any elections whatsoever. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And continues on. Of course, there are some people that say the right to vote belongs to citizens, the owners of the country. Yeah, but this bill cannot be passed without the approval of the main opposition party, the Democratic Party of Korea, which holds a majority of the National Assembly. So it's kind of the same thing. You got the right, the left, the conservatives, the liberals, they're fighting all the time. But yeah, so it probably won't go through. But as the number of foreign residents rises, including those with permanent residency, the country has become even more polarized politically. Their political opinions have become more important. In the 22 local elections, Kim Dong-yeon won by just 8,900 votes to become the governor of Gyeonggi Province, and there were 50,000 permanent residents of foreign nationality who were mostly Chinese. This is a very interesting thing because of all the foreigners that live in Korea, 80% of them are Chinese. So, being that China, the government is, that whole thing. Talking about, Chinese spies in the American military and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it kind of makes you go, But yeah, again, it begs the question, if you're not a citizen of a country, why should you have the right to vote in that country? Conservatives worry that non-citizens will increasingly play a bigger role in elections, both on candidates and voters, amid projected demographic changes driven by the nation's low birth rate. So, yeah, this whole deal goes on and talking about how, hey, well, we're a bunch of foreigners are going to vote. It's not a problem. But now that there is no sound, really? What? You tried turning up the volume? I've got, let me see what I got here. Testing. No sound. I've got sound on my end. And let me see. Let's see what happens. Maybe I can pull myself up on YouTube. And anybody else say I have no sound besides retired 850? Let's see. Where's me? Dun, 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 na, 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 na. Retired in Korea. So, let me see. Let's see. Where's me? I got sound. Yeah. So there is sound. Keeps going in and out. Yeah. I don't know what to say. Sorry. But let's continue on with this. So the whole thing with okay, Will says I can hear you okay. Alrighty, cool. Yep, I can hear you. Good to know, bad reception. Yeah, sometimes that happens. I get that too on some live stuff. And then there's other times where I'm an idiot and what I end up doing is having the volume down and then I turn the volume down on the speaker, and then I have the volume on the computer itself, and I kind of do stupid sometimes. Not that you did, but that's what I do. So, but anyway, yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing with, if you're a citizen of a country, yeah, you should have the right to vote. I think if you're not a citizen, then you probably shouldn't have the right to vote. Because now it's gotten to the point of where there's so many Chinese here, and that's the other thing that's really interesting, is there's a ton of Chinese that are buying up a lot of properties here in Korea. And especially if you go down to Jeju Island, there have been articles and reports written about how Chinese are buying up properties down at Jeju Island like nobody's business. And we also see reports of Chinese buying a ton of properties in Japan as well. So rich Chinese are buying a ton of property sight unseen. I talked to a realtor, and it's like, yeah, Chinese are just like, see a picture of a place. Some people don't even need pictures. As long as it's near a tourist area, they buy the property, boom, and it's good to go. I mean, I bought our apartment here. Foreigners can buy property in Korea. But now it's getting to the place of where there's so much foreign ownership of Korean property and land and so on and so forth. Now it's becoming a problem. I think it kind of, it begs the question, how much property should a country sell foreigners? And being a foreigner myself, yes, I'm a foreigner. I have a resident visa. My wife has her visa, and eventually, she's going to get her dual citizenship. I'm going to try to go for the F513 visa, which will give me a 10-year visa somewhere down the road. Hopefully, we'll see. And, so I have to prove that I have the income, that I live here. I have to show my address. So, I should be able to buy property. But when it comes to a place of where you have people that don't have resident visas, should they be able to buy property? Now we're kind of getting into the gray area. So that's kind of an interesting thing that we see there. And especially, again, with so many Chinese people buying up properties and now getting involved in local elections, have there been times when China and Chinese people have been involved in corruption in other countries? Oh, yeah. So this is going to continue to be a problem as we go down the road. But it's just some interesting stuff. Speaking of foreigners and things like that, let's talk about Korean marriages. Marriages with foreign spouses in Korea rise for the third year in 2024. Foreign marriages rose by the third consecutive year, and since we just finished 2024. The number of multicultural marriages reached 20,759 last year, up 1,042 from the previous year. So, the number of international marriages declined to around 15,000 in 2020 and about 24,000 the previous year, and it talks about that. But last year, it ends up that the multicultural marriages accounted for 9.3%, down from 10.1% the previous year. Vietnamese women made up the largest share of all foreign wives, at 32.1%, followed by Chinese women at 16.7%, Thai women at 13.7%. Among foreign husbands, the United States accounted for 28.9%, followed by those from China at 17.6%, and Vietnam at 15%. So, it's kind of an interesting thing. And then the fact that, but way back in the day, it ended up that 35 years ago, my wife and I met, and, we looked across the crowded room, and it was love at first sight, and courted her for a year, and then we ended up getting married, just over a year, and then we ended up getting married. But back then, Koreans marrying foreigners was really frowned upon. It was kind of like there's the stigma that if you married a foreigner, and this is how homogenous the society was and is to some degree now. It's a lot better now. But back then, it was like prostitute, and then it was like, married to a foreigner or GI. it was kind of like right along there. And then, so on the social status, there's a stigma that if you married a foreigner, unless they were, a rich businessman or something, there's obviously some distinctions. But for marrying a GI or something like that, you were really looked down upon. Unfortunately, there was a lot of racism that we experienced, but screw them, who cares? We continued on with our life. We faced racism in the United States, being a multicultural couple, and especially living in Canyon City, Colorado, the Klan capital of Colorado. We didn't know that until after we moved there. And it was just absolutely kind of insane. But then we come back and we come to Korea. And of course, now they have foreigners on TV, they have multicultural marriages, and so on and so forth. And it's really been accepted by the younger generation, which is good. But still, this is kind of an interesting little thing on how more and more people are going to foreign countries to get wives, which is interesting because there's a lot of the passport bros. In other words, that's kind of a term of American men that go to different country to find traditional wives, because a lot of the women in the United States are not traditional anymore, and they're just a mess. It's drama and drama and more drama, and so guys will end up getting their passports and going to foreign countries and marrying people from Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, and other places because those women are more traditional. They fill the more traditional roles. So that's kind of interesting. But going back to this article, it says the number of divorces among multicultural couples decreased by 1.4%, totaling 6,000. Meanwhile, the total number of couples tying the knot surged 14.8% on year to 222,422 in 2024. It marked the sharpest annual increase since the agency began compiling the data in 1970. So yeah, pretty interesting stuff about foreign marriages. And I was a trendsetter. Me and my wife are a trendsetter before any of this stuff happened. So it was kind of interesting. And there's a lot of things that we saw when we got married. The wife didn't speak much English. I was young and stupid, so there's a combination for you. But we were able to come together. We did the dictionary thing and trying to figure out how to speak. And I was in the Army, tried to, taught my wife how to do. She already knew how to do budgets and track money and all that stuff. She didn't know how to write checks, so I taught her how to write checks, drive a car, do all that stuff. But operating in a second language in a foreign country, the United States, and then I'm with a brand new baby, and then me saying, okay, sweetie, I'm going to go on deployment, see you in a few months. I mean, it was like, and she's scared to drive. And even before I taught her to drive, I went on deployments. And the interesting thing was, I remember she told me that our daughter got sick one time. So she went to the neighbor's house. And with the broken little English that she had, they were able to get her to the hospital and so on and so forth. But that kind of put a fire under her to learn how to drive. But thankfully, we lived in an area where there was other military couples, and they took mercy on my wife and everything. And just kind of it was bad, but it was good because there was somebody there that had your back, and they could relate to you because they were fellow service members and their family members. So, yeah, very interesting things, talking about, our past and what we experienced and now. And I wouldn't trade my wife for the world. I don't know if she'd trade me in. That begs the question. But she thinks I'm a keeper now after 30 some odd years. So I think I'm safe. As long as I just keep doing what I'm doing and agree, I'll be good to go. The next thing we're going to talk about, being a foreigner here in Korea, getting the visa. I have an F1 visa. My wife has an F4 visa. She's a returning Korean national. She became an American citizen. And that is how we're able to stay in Korea. So initially it was for my wife's F4 visa was good for 2 years. My F1, being the spouse of her on her F4 visa, was good for 1 year, which I don't understand why. because we've been married for 30 some odd years. So we put in some additional paperwork, like our daughter's birth certificate and so on and so forth, our marriage certificate. And then now the terms of our visas are the same. So when we have to renew our visas, it's not like staggered throughout the year. So that's kind of a good thing. But with that, there's other changes coming about here in Korea for foreigners. And that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I think it's going to be a good thing. But for older people that aren't technologically savvy, it could pose some problems. And we've experienced this here in Korea. But what we're talking about now is the banks allow services with mobile foreigner registration cards. So in other words, when you do your visa and you will get a Korean residence card, KRC. It used to be an ARC, alien registration card, but somebody said the word alien was offensive, so, I don't get it. But so they changed the name to KRC, and when you get your KRC card, then you're able to open bank accounts, get permanent cell phone service, and so on and so forth. A lot of things. But now they're opening this up to have mobile ARC cards or KRC cards on your phone. So digital ID. Oh no, it's the mark of the beast, 666, the end. But excuse me. Registered foreign residents in Korea with a full mobile foreigner registration card will be able to use it for financial services as opening banks at 6 banks beginning Friday. Now this has been out for a while. It's been a number of months. We haven't gotten it yet. I think we need to do that one of these days. Maybe I can talk to wife and maybe we can just go to the local city office, because basically you give them your KRC card to prove that you are, and they check it, and then you scan a QR code that they provide, and boom, it's on your phone. So 6 different banks: Shinhan Bank, KEB Bank, Hana Bank, IM Bank, Busan Bank, Jeonbuk Bank, and Jeju Bank. The bank that we have isn't on this list, but we already have a bank account, so we're good to go. Jeonbuk Bank will allow foreign nationals to use the digital ID cards for non-face-to-face services, with others planning to follow. Eventually, this is going to be a thing nationwide. The changes come after the Immigration Control Act revised a grant to grant the mobile foreigner registration card the same legal status as the physical card. So that's the great thing about Korea, is they're really up on technology, and they advance further than what we see in the United States. So here in the United States, or I shouldn't say here in the United States, but in the United States, for example, we've seen the problems with the Social Security and how there's massive abuse of Social Security. I'm an independent, so let's not do the political fighting thing, but there is problems within the Social Security system and a lot of government agencies. You need to trim the fat. That's my thing. And the inefficiency. Let's make it more efficient. But with that, what we end up finding is you have to verify that you're still alive with Social Security. That's going to be the thing that's going to be popping up. And who is... Oh, okay. All righty. But you need to verify. It used to be able to do it over the phone. And apparently there's been a number of problems where, I'm George Jones. I'm 105, and yes, I'm alive, and send me my check, and I'm not George Jones. There's a lot of that happening, unfortunately. So now comes into the United States that you need to verify who you are. They're going to be implementing that. It might be good with facial recognition or a similar system like we've seen in Korea, of having something on your phone, being able to do facial recognition, live, verification, but there's somebody will come up with something and be able to cheat the system. But, excuse me, you always see the articles where, the lady's like has this almost dead guy. No, it was a dead guy. There was a dead guy. She wheeled him into a bank. I don't know if this was the United States, but she wheeled him into the bank to withdraw money, and apparently the guy was dead. And she was trying to get her pay, trying to get paid. So yeah, very interesting stuff. But I think we need to find a ways to do that. Back to the article, the Minister of Justice began issuing the mobile IDs in January, and it's March now. And I've said I've been going to do it, and yeah, it's been a few months already. Foreign nationals who plan to stay in Korea for more than 90 days after entry must register their residency with a relevant authority within 90 days of arrival. So basically, for those of you who don't know, what we ended up doing is we came to Korea on a tourist visa, which is good for 90 days. And then, because we thought, well, let's try it, and if we like it, we can submit our visa paperwork. If we don't like it, we'll just go to some other country. Well, we ended up putting in our F1 and F4 visa, and as soon as we submitted that 90-day time frame stops until you get an answer on the application. It should also be noted that you can do your F1 and F4 visa before you even come to Korea and get that approved. And so when you land in Korea, you already have the visas. You can immediately open bank accounts, get your cell phone service, and so on and so forth. So if you don't want to wait around maybe 2.5 months, get those visas before you come to Korea. If you don't mind waiting around for 2.5 months, knock yourself out. If I could go back in time, we would have done that, but we didn't. So yeah, that's the whole thing. Is after 90 days, you have to change your visa status, whether you extend or you're doing a work vacation thing, digital nomad, which there's a whole ton of stuff. Even work vacation, you could do a year in Korea, and you're allowed to do a part-time job for a year. Just to check out Korea and have fun. So, got to do a little bit of work, but it works on that end. So anyway, any registered foreign resident age 14 or older with a smartphone under their name is eligible to receive a digital ID card. Here in Korea, everything is tied to your identity and your KRC, your Korean registration card, kind of like your green card in the United States. And that is heavily linked to your phone and your personal identity. So a lot of stuff, even purchasing things online, will be tied to your KRC, which is tied to your phone, which is tied to your passport, and it can get pretty involved. If you put in a comma and you're trying to order stuff online, Stephen Michael Wilson, or Wilson, comma, Stephen Michael, that's my name, and I use that, but my passport and my Korean registration says Wilson Stephen Michael and there's no comma, yeah, you won't get your stuff until you make that correction. So you have to, it's kind of a pain. So anyway, the number of long-term residents in Korea continues to grow, so does the demand for financial services. And what we end up seeing in the aging population here in Korea is that a lot of people foreigners are being hired to do work in Korea. A lot of Chinese, a lot of Filipinos, a lot of different nationalities, Sri Lanka, and they come to Korea and they work and do labor, farming, factory work, whatever it is, construction, trades, all of that, because they get paid more here in Korea than they do in their home country. So it's kind of a win-win. Korea, they don't have to pay as much, but these people are getting paid more than what they were at home. So, it works out. Everybody wins in the end. But with that, when you have foreigners here, they got to have a place to get their paychecks, and they're going to need a bank. And then, so this is a good thing. And I think with Korea and the ever-aging population and the declining workforce, they're going to have more foreign workers in this country. That's going to continue to be a thing over time here. And of course, you're going to need those services to, match that demographic that are coming in. So yeah, going back to the article, it says the long-term foreign resident population increased from 1.7 million in 22 to 2 million in 2024. So yeah, we've had kind of a marked increase in the number of foreigners who have come to Korea long term. And I'm assuming that's for, people like me, people that are foreign workers and so on and so forth. says we plan to continue supporting the use of the mobile foreign ID cards at other financial institutions. Other banks such as Wari Bank, NH Bank, that's the one we have, KB, Gukman Bank, and Industrial Bank of Korea are also set to allow account openings and services within the first half of the year. So yeah, that's what we got going on. We've got a lot of stuff going on for here in Korea. Doctor strike, voting. Eventually I'm hoping to get that F513 visa. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But one bonus thing that we should talk about is the F1 visa. I have an F1 visa. And matter of fact, let me pull up exactly because I forget what it is. They have different designations for visas. And F dash F1? Yeah, F19 visa is, mine's an F19. So my wife is an F4 visa. And with that, my wife just had lunch with the immigration lawyer. They became friends. And so anyway, they had lunch, and the lady ended up talking about saying, hey, how the F1 visa is changing to an F3 visa. That's going to be coming up in the near future. Nothing changes other than the name. And so the which begs the question, what is the Korean F1 or F3 visa? F3 visa. So it talks about, So it talks about an F3 visa in South Korea is a family visa for spouses of minor children or Korean nationals or foreigners with long-term visas. So the designation is going to be changed from F1 to F3, but all the qualifications and everything as of now is still going to be the same. So yeah, we've got some little changes coming down the pipe, and things change. Immigration laws change. Matter of fact, my wife was telling me a story she heard from the immigration lady, was that there was somebody that was putting in for, the F513 visa, and that's kind of like a 10-year visa. It takes 8 to 9 months to get that approved, and there's a couple of things. The interesting thing about the F513 visa is normally what people have been saying is that when you reach 60 years old, that you're eligible for that F513 visa. I found differing information on the interwebs, and so I had my wife ask the immigration lady, and she said, yeah, well, there's different versions of the F513 visa. And so in other words, you have to have been in Korea for, I think, 3 years. For 3 years on a long-term resident visa, so I'm at 2, I'm almost there. So that's a requirement, is that 3 years of living in Korea on a long-term visa. And then the other requirement is you have to meet the pay for the Korean GNI, which is around 34,000 USD right now. And you have to take a language and written proficiency test. You have to take a language test. So if you do that, and then you submit the paperwork and you pass the test, you submit the paperwork, and it's going to take 8 or 9 months to get approved, and boom, you get your F513 visa. But yeah, I've been hearing that you have to be age 60 and you have to have twice the GNI. Well, that's actually true because that's another variation of the F513 visa. So with that variation, you still have to be in Korea for 3 years minimum, which you're good to go. But the GNI, if you do not take the language test, your GNI has to be double the GNI. So we're talking about $66,000, $68,000 per year. And if you make that much money through investments, retirements, and so on and so forth, you do not have to take the language test. It is not a requirement. So, and you can file the F513 visa at any time. You don't have to be age 60, according to the immigration lady that my wife spoke to, that we've been using for our F1 and F4 visas. She said mostly what happens is that with foreigners, they get over here and they're retired, and they'll, oh, you can put in for this F513 visa, and they're 65 years old. So people, and then you have to have twice the GNI of Korea. So people ended up saying, well, yeah, you can submit it at age 55, at 65, and you have to pay twice the, earn twice the GNI. And so that was kind of the rule that popped up out of that, was somebody was 65. Well, then I heard people telling me, well, I got it and I was age 62. And then I ran across somebody else who said, no, I got it when I was 60. So that really had me questioning, and I was like, well, let me have the wife ask this immigration lady. She said you can file for it at any age. There is no age requirement for the F513. So that is really interesting in of itself. But of the components, the one option is you take a Korean language test, and if you pass that, then you only have to have the GNI for a year, which is like $34,000 a year earning. And then, boom, submit the paperwork, 8-9 months, it should get approved unless something changes. If you don't take the language test, then the monetary requirement is 2 times 2 the GNI, which is about $68,000 a year. So for the people that were telling me, no, it's 65, and other, no, it's 62, or no, I did it at age 60. That's all true, but you can file it whenever. So I just wanted to clear that up because there's a number of people that are asking me about it, and I promised that I would ask the immigration lawyer, and boom, this is the information that we got. With that being said, you can still have some problems with Korean immigration. So, for example, if the immigration laws change, let's say you take the language test, or you got 2 years worth of the GNI, it doesn't really matter. You submitted your F513 paperwork, and it's going to take 8 to 9 months for that approval process normally. There's a caveat, because if the immigration laws change during that time frame and they say, well, hey, now we want to change the monetary requirement to 5 times the amount of GNI, then your application that is submitted is going to get rejected. So if immigration laws change, it could have a problem. So the story that was relayed to my wife is that there was somebody from a different country, not the United States, had put in for the F513 visa, and there were some changes, or no, it wasn't the F513 visa, it was some other long-term visa. But there were some immigration law changes, so their application got rejected. So they had to do some other requirements were added or something like that. So yeah, just because you have your application submitted doesn't mean you're safe, okay? There still could be bumps in the road if there's changes in the immigration law. So, but normally that's not a problem. So anyway, that's what we got going on here in Korea. Very interesting stuff with the doctor strike, immigration, foreigners voting. Digital IDs is a thing. Old people who don't like technology, yeah, that could be a problem. And then, yeah, everybody's got the app on their phone to translate. So I'm not sure why or how the Vietnamese woman who was pregnant in the ambulance couldn't get to a hospital, 13 hospitals, because they couldn't translate. There was no translator. Everybody's got a phone. Come on. But yeah, the doctor strike is still going on. And so keep your fingers crossed that will get fixed. It hasn't affected us as of yet. So keep the fingers crossed. But it has caused a lot of problems in Korea, and I'm just amazed that it has been going on for so long. But when you live in a foreign country, you're going to have to jump through some hoops. You're going to have some other experiences that might not be fun, might be a little stressful at times. But in the grand scheme of things, it was either retire early here in Korea or overseas somewhere, or stay in the United States and work until I was almost 70. So it was like, yeah, I'm going to retire early at 54, and we're going to bang on with that. I'll deal with the minor inconveniences. So that's what we got going on. Yeah, fun stuff. With that being said, yeah, there is we're at the end. We're at the end of the video, and if you have any questions, you can email me at officialthevariedlife@gmail.com. I have successfully answered every single person who has emailed me, even the crazy people. But aren't we all crazy? With that, like and subscribe to the Varied Life channel. I would really appreciate that. That would help out with the YouTube algorithm. And if you got anything out of this video or my other ones and you want to take it a step further, you can buy me a coffee. There's a link in the description box down below. And even right here, there's a list of people who have bought me coffees, and I have much respect for them. We got a question from Retired 850. He says, do you miss work? That's a good question, but no, because I find myself extremely busy with all of this stuff that I got going on. I'm really busy. I am so busy, I don't miss work. And I enjoyed working. I was a workaholic, did the military, worked for the state of Colorado, electronics technician, worked in prisons, did prison ministry for a couple of years, always busy. But when I retired, I found that I had time, but then I started taking care of myself. I go to the gym 4 days a week, 2 or 3 hours at a pop there, hit the sauna, the whole 9 yards. The wife and I do that. So that's 4 days out of the week. And then I do resin printing. And then I just got into FDM printing. Then I do miniature painting. And then, I make these videos and stuff like that. And I help people, that are thinking about doing the same thing we did. And I can tell you that it's like, wow, I'm really busy. So, and there are some other volunteer things that I would like to do, but it's like, wow, now there's, but then again, the wife and I love going to the gym. It's just, I don't know. I don't miss punching the clock anymore. And especially since, our finances, we're comfortable. We're not stinking rich. We're comfortable. We're able to pay our bills, save a few $100 here and there. I don't miss the work grind at all. And that was the main reason for wanting to retire overseas, is because I was tired of crappy employers. I was tired of punching the clock. I was tired of the stress. I was tired of being tired of the stress and the work and all of that. And since we've retired, for some people, let's go on a rant a little bit. But for some people, it ends up both spouses work, and then when they retire, they don't like each other. Fortunately for me and my wife, we're not like that. We still need our time and our distance apart and do things, because you have to have your own me time. But for us, we've grown closer in our relationship, and doing hobbies and things like that keeps us active. Go out on lunch dates. You got to travel around. I think we're going to try to take a trip later this year, and then we'll buy an apartment or downsize and rent this place out, and then go on more trips. So don't miss work at all. Don't miss work at all. Very busy, but hey, it is what it is, and there's nothing wrong with working. So, if you have any questions about our visa situation, you can look at the playlist, Retired in Korea, and what we did and our experiences and the visas and apartment hunting. And I'm going to try to con the wife into doing an expense video of our monthly expenses, because more people have been asking for that. But yeah, if you have any questions about that, there's the email. You can leave comment section and the comments below, and I'll be happy to reply. So with that, the latte has gotten cold. Almost done. Got to get some breakfast. Got to hit to the gym, get in shape, and continue to do that. And with that, I got to say thank you for all of you that have been watching. I really appreciate that. And if you have any topics or ideas that you want me to cover, put them in the comment section. I would like to see what you have to say. So with that, we're going to finish up this video, and we'll see you on the next one, okay? Peace. Yeah, good stuff.